It's December 9th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the martial law saga. Following the failure of the impeachment vote against President Yoon Suk Yeol, the country's ruling party pledged to stabilize the leadership, while demanding that the South Korean leader step down as a president early and in an orderly manner. Prime Minister Han Kang vowed to keep domestic and foreign affairs intact. Prosecutors have confirmed that President Yoon is a suspect on charges of insurrection, while the former defense minister Kim Yong-hyun, who is believed to have advised Yoon to declare martial law, already had 2 rounds of questioning by prosecutors. The fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime after 13 years of war in Syria has now ended more than 50 years of brutal dictatorship by his family. Assad and his family had reportedly fled to Moscow and were granted a political asylum. Prime Minister Han Kang and ruling party leader Han Dong-won have pledged to stabilize state affairs and address pressing domestic and foreign challenges. Now, this includes calls for President Yoon to step down and stay away from governance. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
Prime Minister Han Kang pledged the government will keep calm and carry on handling domestic and foreign challenges amid the political storm following President Yoon Suk Yeol's short-lived martial law order last week. After a motion to impeach the president fell through in Parliament, the Prime Minister held a joint press conference with ruling party leader Han Dong-won on Sunday in their aim to, quote, ensure all state functions operate smoothly, while making it clear that the nation's executive will not have a part in domestic or foreign policy.
Above all else, it is crucial to ensure that there is no disruption in state affairs. We will do our utmost every moment to serve the people so that the safety of the nation and the daily lives of its citizens remain unshaken.
The diplomat turned Prime Minister stressed the need to continue the country's foreign policy initiatives in an ever-changing geopolitical environment. Seeking cooperation with the incoming Donald Trump administration remains a vital task for the country.
Maintaining a robust ROK-US alliance and strengthening security cooperation among South Korea, the United States and Japan are critical and pressing tasks. Led by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the whole cabinet will work tirelessly to preserve trust with our allies, including the US, Japan and other friendly nations.
On economic and social challenges facing the nation, Han vowed to focus on people's livelihoods, respond swiftly to financial and foreign exchange risks, as well as strengthen law and order and public safety. He called on the National Assembly to cooperate in passing the government's budget bill. Going forward, the PM and ruling party chief agreed to hold regular meetings. The show of cooperation between the 2 officials indicates their push for President Yoon Suk Yeol to step down in an orderly way, rather than face impeachment, which could disrupt the government's functions and paralyze major policy initiatives. The opposition Democratic Party of Korea heavily criticized the approach, deeming it unconstitutional and vowed weekly impeachment motions. The South Korean constitution allows the Prime Minister to act as interim leader only when the president is unable to fulfill duties due to death, resignation or impeachment. As for President Yoon, the troubled leader has stayed silent since his apology to the public. His weekly meeting with the Prime Minister on Monday was cancelled according to the PM's office, although he has accepted ministerial resignations and named new state officials. Yoon stated on Saturday that he would leave state affairs to the ruling party and the government, but has not commented on their push for his early resignation. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And both the National Assembly Speaker and the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea chair criticized Han's announcement on Sunday, saying the new way of running the government was unconstitutional. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
No regard for the Constitution or the people of South Korea. That's how the Speaker of the National Assembly, Woo Won-sik, on Sunday described plans by Prime Minister Han Kang and ruling People Power Party Chair Han Dong-hoon about how the government will be run between the Prime Minister and the ruling PPP.
The Constitution of the Republic of Korea provides procedures to suspend the powers of the President and remove them from office when they commit a serious violation of the Constitution or laws, the impeachment process.
He added the authority granted to presidents by the citizens of the country can't simply be yielded to others at will, and that Yoon has no right to transfer that to the people of his choice. Woo also said during his press briefing that Prime Minister Han Duck-soo called him after the announcement to set up a meeting with Woo to discuss the situation. Woo says he rejected the request as he believes impeachment is the only option at this point. The main opposition Democratic Party of Korea chair Lee Jae-myung also called the announcement unconstitutional and that it is in fact another coup.
How is it possible to officially announce such an absurd idea of temporarily sidelining the president's authority without the president being stripped of his powers, and having the prime minister and the ruling party leader jointly exercise presidential powers?
Citing Yoon's decision to accept the resignations of those involved in the declaration of martial law, as well as his new appointments to certain positions since Wednesday, he said President Yoon is still acting as a president. He also said there will be another impeachment motion against Yoon this coming Saturday, exactly a week after the first one, saying it's the only way to deal with the current situation. Meanwhile, under heavy pressure due to their decision to boycott the impeachment vote last Saturday, senior lawmakers of at least 4 terms of the ruling PPP are set to meet on Monday morning to discuss future plans. And as the PPP floor leader Chu Kyung-ho resigned following the boycott, the ruling party's leader is set to call up lawmakers of at least 3 terms to discuss electing a replacement on Monday. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In the meantime, President Yoon has been booked as a suspect on charges of treason, while the police have raided the former defense minister's residence and office. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Investigations have begun over the declaration of martial law on December 3rd. Prosecutors have confirmed that President Yoon Suk Yeol has been named as a suspect on charges of treason. On Sunday, during the press briefing, the head of the Special Prosecution Unit said multiple complaints have been filed regarding the president, and that Yoon being named as a suspect would be accurate when there are such filings. While saying the investigation would address both insurrection and abuse of power allegations, the special unit's head vowed that the team would do its best not to leave any suspicions.
The Special Investigation Headquarters handling the martial law case will do its best to ensure that no suspicions remain regarding this critical national incident.
On Sunday, the prosecution office's special investigation team grilled the former defense minister Kim Yong-hyun, a key figure of the martial law declaration. Kim voluntarily appeared at the Seoul Central Prosecutor's office early on Sunday and was taken into custody at a detention facility in eastern Seoul under emergency arrest provisions. While he reportedly admitted that he suggested the declaration of martial law to the president and ordered the martial law forces to enter the National Assembly, he said there was nothing illegal or unconstitutional. As the prosecution has 48 hours to detain and question the suspect since the emergency arrest, the prosecution is expected to file for a court warrant late Monday night. The prosecution also questioned Park An-soo, who was the martial law commander, as a witness and reportedly asked Park about his role and the instructions he received before and after the declaration of martial law. The police have also formed their own special investigation team and raided the official residence and office of former Defense Minister Kim. They confiscated a cell phone and 17 other digital devices, including a laptop, on Sunday. Meanwhile, regarding the separate probes that the prosecution and police have launched, the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials sent letters to each of them, requesting them to send the case to the CIO, citing concerns over an overlapping of jurisdiction. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
So President Yoon avoided the worst-case scenario, impeachment. Still, his political future remains murky as he is now under investigation for insurrection. We connect with lawyer Kim Ji-soo this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So more hurdles appear to be lying ahead for President Yoon Suk Yeol for now. Will President Yoon be able to carry out duties and his roles as the president?
Well, President Yoon Suk Yeol's ability to perform his presidential duties is severely compromised right now due to the ongoing investigation into treason charges related to his recent martial law declaration. Legally, while the sitting president in South Korea is generally immune from prosecution, the immunity and treason does not extend to charges of insurrection or treason. Politically, Yoon's active role as a president is also already paralyzed. His absence from scheduled meetings, including those with senior aides and the prime minister, underscores the functional dormancy of his administration. And this vegetative state of the presidential office is further amplified by the People Power Party, also known as 국민의힘's call for his early resignation, signalizing growing isolation even from his allies. So it is highly unlikely that President Yoon can continue to fulfill his presidential duties in any meaningful capacity.
So it looks like he'll be absent from political scenes for now, but the opposition camp is pushing for another impeachment motion this weekend. But what other cards does the opposition camp have? Any other legal options other than just issuing an impeachment motion every week with no limit?
Well, so there is the filing a motion every week is the best option they can have right now, because technically the opposition can just keep issuing impeachment motions since there are no explicit legal limits. However, there is also a principle called 일사부재의 non-repetition rule that imposes a kind of a limit. And under the non-repetition principle, an identical impeachment motion cannot be reintroduced within the same parliamentary session. And this restriction, however, only applies to ongoing sessions, meaning once the session concludes, the motion can legally be submitted again in a new session. So Democratic Party has already announced its plans to reintroduce the impeachment motion after the current regular session ends. And if this motion fails, they intend to convene consecutive short extra sessions to continuously submit impeachment motions. So this tactical approach demonstrates the opposition's resolve to pursue action against President Yoon Suk Yeol through careful use of parliamentary procedures, and it seems to be the best option they can have right now.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a long battle between the opposition camp and also President Yoon Suk Yeol. But what's even more concerning for President Yoon himself is that he is now under investigation for insurrection related to the martial law order last week. The question is, how far will investigations on President Yoon go?
Well, this kind of development is quite unprecedented in South Korean history. So there was a case of prior President Chun Jo-hwan, but it was only after he ended his term as presidency. So it is the first time a sitting president is under investigation as a suspect in a case of insurrection and treason. And under the Constitution, such kind of treason is one of the few crimes where a immunity is not applied. So the investigation scope will likely extend to analyzing whether Yoon directly orchestrated actions that disrupt democratic institutions. And with this designation as a suspect, it is increasingly likely that prosecutors will pursue detailed questioning and potentially seeking access to sensitive locations such as presidential residence or offices to gather evidence. And recent cases such as the search of defense ministry definitely suggest that there is no space is off limit if it is relevant to this kind of investigation.
I see. Then the presidential office is yet to make a comment on this investigation against President Yoon. We haven't heard anything from the top office. What legal options do you think the top office is considering at the moment then?
Well, first of all, the silence from the presidential office reflects a strategic pause. It is clear that they're taking a moment to carefully access their legal and political strategy in this unprecedented situation. And with President Yoon now being a suspect in a treason case, their options are limited by highly significant. So first of all, they'll be focusing on his legal defense, definitely. And while President Yoon has stated that he's going to not avoid legal or political responsibility, his legal team is undoubtedly examining ways to challenge the insurrection charges. And these could include, during the evidence, arguing that the martial law declaration was just a way to prevent national security measures, or he could shift responsibility to advisors like former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun. And given Yoon's background as a former prosecutor general, we can expect a highly technical legal defense. However, with growing calls for Yoon's early resignation, the presidential office may also be weighing a potential exit strategy. An exit strategy in this context refers to a coordinated plan for President Yoon to step down in a way that minimizes legal and political damage while stabilizing the current crisis. And it is difficult to predict with certainty that what kind of legal steps the presidential official might take. But as a critical institution of government, we are hoping that they will act in accordance with the principles of justice and uphold the values of democracy.
Definitely. And last but not least, former Defense Minister Kim, like you mentioned, he was arrested and questioned by prosecutors over the weekend. Now, does he have any legal options to defend himself?
Well, Kim has already been served with a formal arrest warrant, and the investigation will keep focusing on gathering evidence to establish intent, particularly around whether his actions were coordinated with President Yoon as a part of a larger strategy to support dissent. And the recent revelation that Kim has changed his mobile phones prior to his arrest raises serious questions about potential obstruction of justice. And strategically, Kim's defense will likely emphasize that he was just acting under orders to protect national security, which is an attempt to deflect responsibility onto higher authorities. However, this approach is improbable because it could simply implicate President Yoon directly, potentially expanding the political fallout, and will have profound implications for both legal accountability and political alignments in the country. And Kim Yong-hyun's legal journey is intricately tied to President Yoon's investigation for now, and the public should closely follow both cases to understand how justice and democracy are upheld in time of crisis.
Indeed. Thanks so much for connecting with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, following the failure of the impeachment vote at the weekend, the benchmark KOSPI opened down 1.47% at 2,392 on Monday morning. And the tech-heavy KOSDOG opened 1.81% down at 649. The $1 exchange rate in the Seoul foreign exchange market opened at 1,426, weakening by 6.81. And to tackle the potential economic fallout of the political turmoil, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok, along with the top economic and financial officials, announced the deployment of all possible market stabilization measures to prevent excessive market volatility. And during the emergency meeting with top economic and financial officials on Monday, the government is scheduled to deploy funds of 100 billion Korean won, or around $70 million by next week. It also plans to roll out a second round of stabilization funds worth around $210 million. Now, structural measures to improve foreign exchange liquidity and inflows will also be announced by December. In other news, Russian media outlets say Syria's ousted leader Bashar al-Assad and his family are now in Moscow after being granted asylum. This comes as the rebel militant group HTS took over Damascus on Sunday. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Syria's ousted leader Bashar al-Assad and his family have arrived in Russia after being granted asylum by Moscow. According to Russia's Interfax news agency on Sunday, al-Assad arrived in Moscow, where the former Syrian leader and his family were given asylum on humanitarian grounds. The Russian Foreign Ministry also issued a statement saying that al-Assad decided to leave the presidential post and left the country, while giving instructions to transfer power peacefully. The al-Assad family's reign in Syria came to an end after 53 years on Sunday, after rebel forces captured Damascus. The rebel forces stormed through Syria in a matter of days, with the senior commander of the militant group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham declaring the Syrian capital free from the tyrant. U.S. President Joe Biden on Sunday called the fall of the al-Assad regime a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria. Biden said that the ousting of its former leader meant an opportunity for the country to build a better future. The U.S. president vowed to continue engaging with all groups in Syria to help transition away from the former regime towards an independent and sovereign nation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also praised the fall of the al-Assad regime while suggesting that it was a direct result of Israeli attacks on Iran and Hezbollah. Netanyahu added that with the fall of the Syrian government, the Israeli military had to take positions abandoned by the Syrian army near the border with Israel. Syrians took to the streets across the country to celebrate the fall of the al-Assad regime. Over in the capital, people gave a warm welcome to the rebel fighters who led the ousting of the former leader. The celebratory mood was also evident among the many Syrians who left their country since the civil war. And for many, it's an opportunity for them to return home. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said he would absolutely consider withdrawing his country from NATO if European allies did not pay their bills. In an interview with NBC News, which aired on Sunday, Trump said European nations have taken advantage of the U.S. on trade, but the U.S. continues to defend them. He added that if the European countries stopped paying their dues, he would consider leaving the military alliance. Now, during his previous term in office, Trump had pressed the European nations to increase their spending, calling for at least 3% of GDP to be allocated to defense for equitable contribution. Over in Sweden, we are just one day away from Nobel Day, where this year's laureates will be honored at an awards ceremony and banquet. Leading up to the big day, Korean author Han Kang, this year's Nobel Prize winner in literature, has been stepping into the spotlight to meeting with the press and the public. Our Song Yujin has more.
After nearly 2 months of keeping a low profile following her Nobel Prize win, Korean author Han Kang has embraced the spotlight at Nobel Week.
This award is given to the literature, and this year I was awarded. This is my conclusion, and this makes me more comfortable.
Now feeling more at ease with her Nobel laureate title, the 54-year-old author shared her journey of uncovering the overarching theme of her work during her Nobel lecture, Light and Thread.
세계는 왜 이토록 폭력적이고 고통스러운가? 동시에 세계는 어떻게 이렇게 아름다운가? 이 두 질문 사이의 긴장과 내적 투쟁이 나의 글쓰기를 밀고 온 동력이었다고 오랫동안 믿어왔습니다.
These questions were etched in her mind at age 12 after seeing photographs of civilians killed during the Gwangju democratization movement. Decades later, while writing her 2014 novel Human Acts, which delves into the tragedy, she discovered that love, not those questions, was at the heart of her storytelling.
우리는 인간성을 믿고자 하기에 그 믿음이 흔들릴 때 자신이 파괴되는 것을 느끼는 것일까? 우리는 인간을 사랑하고자 하기에 그 사랑이 부서질 때 고통을 느끼는 것일까? 사랑에서 고통이 생겨나고 어떤 고통은 사랑의 증거인 것일까?
This connection to love, however, had always been with her. At 8 years old, Han wrote a poem that read, "Where is love? It is inside my thumb-thumping, beating chest. What is love? It is the gold thread connecting between our hearts." Now, she sees writing itself as an act of that love.
소설을 쓸 때 나는 신체를 사용합니다. 심장이 뛰고 갈증과 허기를 느끼고 걷고 달리고 바람과 눈비를 맞고 손을 맞잡는 모든 감각의 세부들을 사용합니다. 그 생생한 감각들을 전류처럼 문장들에 불어넣으려 하고 그 전류가 읽는 사람들에게 전달되는 것을 느낄 때면 놀라고 감동합니다. 언어가 우리를 잇는 실이라는 것을
Han concluded her 30-minute lecture by thanking her readers.
So with two major events in her Nobel Week itinerary completed, up next for the Nobel laureate in literature is attending the Nobel Prize ceremony and banquet on Tuesday, December 10th. Song Yujin, Arirang News, Stockholm.
Good morning, I'm Yoon Seong, and this is The World Now. We begin in the Netherlands. An explosion and fire in an apartment block in The Hague has killed at least 3 people. Local authorities say the incident on Saturday morning also left several injured. The Hague Mayor Jan van Janen said in a press conference that investigators are considering all possibilities, though the exact cause of the explosion remains unclear. Emergency responders are continuing to search for missing persons in the debris of the collapsed building, but the chances of finding survivors appear slim. Authorities have not disclosed how many individuals remain unaccounted for. The apartment building is located in a residential area not far from the city center. Nearby residents reported hearing a loud explosion, followed by screams early on Saturday morning. Pope Francis has called on U.S. authorities to commute the sentences of death row inmates. The appeal was made during the Pope's weekly Sunday prayer at St. Peter's Square, as he asked for prayers for death row prisoners and for their death sentences to be commuted or changed. Pope Francis, a longtime opponent of capital punishment, has consistently advocated against the practice, even urging the Catholic Church to update its teaching in 2018. It is unusual for the Pope to mention specific countries when addressing the issue, making Sunday's remarks notable. According to the nonprofit Death Penalty Information Center, there are approximately 2,250 death row inmates across the United States, including about 40 held in federal custody. Some U.S. Catholic organizations have also called on President Joe Biden to commute federal sentences before his term ends. 5 years after a catastrophic fire devastated Paris' Notre Dame Cathedral, the iconic landmark reopened on Saturday with a commemorative event honoring emergency responders who played a critical role in saving the 860-year-old building from collapse. A total of 160 firefighters dressed in vivid red uniforms received a standing ovation from attendees. Outside the cathedral, the word "Merci" was projected onto its walls in a heartfelt tribute to their heroic efforts. The event also saw the attendance of prominent international figures, including U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. French President Emmanuel Macron praised the swift restoration work, calling it an achievement of the impossible, and expressed gratitude to everyone involved in saving and rebuilding the cathedral. The cathedral caught fire on April 15, 2019, but restoration was possible thanks to the efforts of firefighters. The red ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland in her role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz have been sold at auction. The iconic shoes were sold in an online auction on Saturday, U.S. local time, for $28 million. In 2005, the shoes were stolen from the Judy Garland Museum in her hometown of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and were only recovered in 2018 after an FBI investigation. Collector Michael Shaw, who had loaned the shoes to the museum, regained possession of them this February and put them up for auction. They are one of 4 surviving pairs of slippers that Garland wore while portraying Dorothy and are considered among the most iconic props in American cinematic history.
It's a bitterly cold morning. Biting winds are making things colder than what the thermometer points to. Make sure to keep your core warm. Layering is key in cold temperatures. And I can't imagine how cold it is in Paju and Taegwallyeong, with a low of nearly minus 13 degrees Celsius in Taegwallyeong. Meanwhile, dry weather alerts are in place for the East Coast. Be careful with anything that could start a fire. Wet weather at the end of the week should help to ease the dryness in the air. Now, afternoon temperatures will be 1 to 3 degrees higher today. Seoul gets up to 6 degrees Celsius, a couple of degrees higher than Sunday in the capital. Daegu and Gwangju top out at 8 degrees. Busan still feels like late autumn with a high of 10 degrees Celsius. Mostly sunny skies will be joined by more clouds in the afternoon. Now, wet weather is in the forecast for the East Coast and west of southern provinces, as well as Jeju Island this week. But the capital area stays mostly sunny with early winter air. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. Have a wonderful start to the week.
저희가 매일매일 자동차를 타고 일상생활에서도 쉽게 사용을 하는데 그런 자동차에서 타이어는 계속해서 버려지고 있거든요. 전 세계적으로 10억 개 이상 버려지고 있는데 특히 소각 처리될 경우에는 대기오염 물질들이 여러 가지가 나오게 되고 매립됐을 때는 지하수나 토양오염 물질들이 많이 방출되게 됩니다. 저희는 그런 타이어들을 어떻게 잘 처리할지 좀 고민을 했었습니다. 타이어가 가지고 있는 접지력이나 내마모성이 좀 우수하다고 생각을 했고요. 저희는 타이어 하나로 신발을 3.5켤레 정도를 만들 수가 있어요. 그렇게 됐을 때 저희의 신발 한 켤레는 타이어에서 발생되는 탄소를 8.9kg 정도 저감할 수 있는 그런 효과가 있습니다. 이 일을 시작하기 전에는 타이어가 그렇게 많이 버려지는지도 몰랐고 그리고 버려진 타이어들이 환경 파괴적으로 처분되는 것도 사실은 잘은 몰랐어요. 점점 더 적체가 되고 있거든요, 타이어들이. 시간이 지나면 지날수록 더 큰 문제가 될 것 같다는 생각에 지금 일을 하고 있습니다. 타이어마다 모양이나 패턴이 굉장히 많이 다양한데 내가 가지고 있는 신발이 다른 신발들과 모양이 다를 수 있다는 점, 그런 점도 제 재미 요소로 좀 다가가고 있습니다. 저희도 그런 계기를 보다 많은 분들께 하나 더 제공해 주고자 매일매일 신는 신발을 만들겠다고 한 것도 있어요. 조금 더 주변을 살펴보면은 나 스스로도 조금 더 환경 보호에 참여할 수 있는 일이나 물건들이 더 있지 않을까, 그렇게 찾아보시면 어떨까 싶습니다. 나는 다시 달릴 수 있게 만드는 그리너입니다.
We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day. We're News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Monday, December 9th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and you're watching News Generation. Today, we're joined by Lee Won-bin.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Julian Kim.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So today, we're going to talk about we're going to focus on the connection between the Korean wave and immigration, which is quite an interesting topic. Now, we brought up this topic, Won-bin, today because recent statistics have shown a sharp increase in the number of immigrants to Korea. So can you kind of help us break down these numbers?
Yeah, of course. So if you take a look in the data, the statistics show a notable rise in immigration to Korea. In 2023, the number of immigrants reached 87,100, a significant increase from 57,800 in 2022. This represents nearly a 50% increase in just 1 year, highlighting how quickly Korea is attracting people from around the world. England came in at the highest at 52.9%, followed by Australia, Spain, Canada, and Japan. Now, what's particularly interesting is that this trend aligns closely with the global appeal of Korean culture. So people aren't just consuming K-pop or K-dramas anymore. They're choosing to live here, drawn by Korea's mix of tradition and modernity.
Right. So we are definitely seeing a big increase in the number of people who are moving to Korea to start a new life. And Korea is indeed on the path to becoming what many people call a multicultural society, which is quite a big change. So Julian, can you tell us more about what a multicultural society is and how Korea is shifting to this new society?
Yeah, so according to the Ministry of Justice December 2023 Statistical Monthly Report, the number of foreign residents last year was approximately 2.5 million, accounting for about 4.8% of Korea's total population. Now, the OECD considers countries with immigrant populations exceeding 5% of the total population to be a multicultural nation, which puts Korea close to that threshold.
Right. So then let's now talk about the reasons. I think Won-bin kind of mentioned this in his earlier answer, but what are the major reasons driving the rise to immigration in Korea? And I think I kind of know the answer because you mentioned the growing appeal of K-culture.
That's right. The Korean wave is undoubtedly one of the most biggest reasons. As Korea's global influence grows through K-pop, K-drama, and even Korean food, more people are seeing the country as an attractive place to live. But besides those hot topics, but it's not only about entertainment. Korea's tech-driven economy, strong job market, and advanced infrastructures make it appealing for professionals and even students to come over and settle in Korea. For many, it's a chance to be part of the culture where they watch through various contents.
Right. So before, it was just a lot of global K-culture fans just merely enjoying this, but now we're seeing them even moving to Korea to settle down here. Now, Julian, and I also want to ask you, what are your thoughts on this growing, what we call a K-wave immigration?
Yeah, so the major reasons driving the rise of immigration is global cultural influence, government policies, and economic opportunities. Now, personally, these are the main factors that motivate my decision to personally move here. But aside from wanting to be closer to family, yes, these are the reasons why I'm currently living in Korea. The Ministry of Justice attributes the rise of immigration to the global Korean wave, also known as Hallyu, which has led to an increase in international students and trainees. The global popularity of K-pop and K-dramas has sparked more interest in Korea, leading to a rise in people coming to the country to live, work, or study. Now, South Korea's increasing global cultural influence is also attracting people who want to learn more about its culture. But it's not just the cultural aspect that draws people in. There are also significant educational and economic opportunities. Korea's media, technology, education, and business sectors are attracting people from all across the world.
Right, so it's not just culture, it's also tech and economic opportunities and etc. And I've also heard that when talking about immigrating to Korea, reverse migration from the United States is becoming more common among Korean Americans in the States. And for those who are unfamiliar with this term, reverse migrants refer to Koreans who emigrated to the U.S. decades ago, returning to Korea, or their children who are now making their way back to Korea. So I want to ask you, Won-bin, could you explain more what reverse immigration is and why more people are hopping onto this trend?
Yeah, of course. Like Eugene just explained, reverse immigration refers refers to Korean immigrants or their descendants returning to Korea after living abroad for a long time, often in places like US and Canada. This trend is gaining momentum for several reasons. One is definitely career opportunities.
Right.
Korea's economy is thriving, and industries like tech and entertainment are global leaders. Another reason, I think, is that the desire to reconnect with Korean heritage. And I feel like Julian would have a lot of things to say about this.
Okay, then now let's ask Julian, as someone who grew up in the U.S. and you've talked about on the show that you're an American citizen. I want to ask you, does your reason to moving to Korea match with what we've just heard related to reverse migration?
Yeah, so honestly, since I was a college student, I've been toying with the idea of moving to Korea. Now, I have many personal reasons for deciding to move to Korea, and some of them, such as career and family, align with what we have already mentioned. However, my main motivation, like what one being said, was to reconnect to my Korean side. Now, many people from immigrant families might empathize with this, but growing up in a country different from your own cultural roots often create a sense of disconnect. But Asian Americans in particular are frequently expected by their families to integrate into American society. That means like speaking fluent English, attending college, and building a career here in the US too. While I'm deeply grateful for the privileges and opportunities of growing up in the US, I've always struggled with feeling not Korean enough. So America is my home. It's where I spent my entire life, and I'm proud to call myself an American. But I'm also very, very proud of my Korean heritage. But yet, despite speaking Korean, I often feel out of touch with like Korean history, cultural nuances, and many even like traditions. Like for example, I don't even know how to play that Korean card game, Ghost Stop.
Ghost Stop.
Yeah. So I find that this move is my own way of bridging that gap. Living here is something I've always wanted to do in my 20s, to truly invest in understanding my culture and also improve my Korean so I can sound like an MZer living in Korea. Yeah. So I'm both a proud American and Korean, and now it just feels like the right time to really embrace both of those dual identities.
Well, I think that if you spend more time living in Korea, you'll get to know all those Korean history, Korean food, and even learn how to play Korean Ghost Stop, which, by the way, I still don't know how to play. Now, the reason why we're seeing immigration becoming such a big news that's drawing huge attention here in the country is because Korea has been largely a homogeneous society, so immigration is still relatively a new concept for many. While some people welcome this diversity, others are quite hesitant because, once again, this is a new change that we're seeing. So as members of the younger generation, what are your thoughts on the growing number of immigrants to Korea?
Personally, I see it as a great opportunity. Honestly, immigration brings diversity, innovation, and new perspectives, which are actually essential for growth, in my opinion.
Right.
That said, I also recognize the challenges like cultural differences and language barriers, which Julian mentioned earlier. Therefore, I also do believe that there will be hiccups during the early stage when immigrants are entering Korea. But these are things that can be addressed and can be solved with education and open-mindedness. For our generation, I think it's about embracing this change and seeing immigration as a way to enrich our society, not just economically, but culturally as well.
Right, and I think that this is a great opportunity for especially the younger generation to communicate and interact with various cultures, because we're now living in an interconnected society and we are seeing globalization more and more. And what do you think, Julian?
Yeah, so immigration is a really complex and multifaceted subject. Now, younger generation are generally more open to it, but we are also aware of the potential challenges and issues that do come with it. But with that being said, there are positive aspects. Immigrants can stimulate the economy, everyone is exposed to more cultures, and it also drives innovation too. But on the other hand, there are negative aspects of immigration too. There's prejudice, language barriers, and many Koreans are prideful of their Korean cultural background and fear that immigration would threaten that. But immigration has currently been a very hot topic, not only because of the rising numbers of immigrants, but also the low birth rate here in Korea. So many people see it as a potential solution to this crisis, but given its complexity, I believe that it's crucial to consider all perspectives and work towards solutions that benefit both the Korean people and immigrants seeking opportunities here. Now, immigration really isn't a one-size-fits-all issue, and any approach must address concerns that embrace the potential it holds too.
You're definitely right. So far, we've heard from our panelists. Now, expanding our discussion, we also asked our viewers about what they think about immigration. And here's what 3 of them said. Our first comment of the day, Eddie Lee 5909. I recently moved to Japan. It has its pros and cons. I like most things better here, but the language barrier makes a lot of things difficult. Inolu Wabora 14. I think moving abroad is a courageous act and a way to expand yourself beyond the horizon. I would like to move abroad because I want somewhere different from home and to explore new cultures. How about you, 2007? I have never lived abroad, but for education and opportunity, it's a great idea. So we've taken a look at our viewers' comments. For a more deeper discussion, we're going to welcome a millennial from Brunei living in Korea. So stay tuned for our live interview after this break.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us this morning is Rosita Idris, a millennial from Brunei living in Korea. Welcome, Rosita, to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining our show. So, Rosita, I want to ask you, how long have you been living in Korea and what motivated you to choose the country?
Okay, so I've been in Korea in accumulation for 5 years now. And what motivates me to come here is that I like learning languages and new culture. So I feel like instead of going to like English-speaking country, I feel like building up another language skill is much more important to me. So that's why I came here. Yeah, so that's what motivates me the most. And then after that, I guess culture study. And then the third one would be Korean way, Hallyu. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Definitely,
yeah.
Right. Now, Rosita, after living here for some time, what do you see as the main pros and cons of life in Korea?
Okay, first of all, I can learn the language, which is, different from English. Because I grew up with learning English and Malay, and then Korean is definitely different. And yeah, I get to learn new skill. And apart from that, I guess like in Korea, I feel like it's a country where I can be independent. Transportation is easy. Like I don't have to drive a car, and I can live alone. Because they have like a room just for one person. So I guess like that suits me a lot. And yeah, everything is just convenient here, I think. Like apart from the price getting expensive these days, but the rest are just perfect for me. It's easy to navigate around. Yeah, that's the pros for me.
Yeah, so do you have any advice or tips for those planning to move to Korea?
I guess like for those who plan to come here, it's really important to know at least like a bit of Korean instead of coming here blindly without knowing anything about the language. And also it's important to learn about the country a little bit, like what to expect. And, sometimes people come here without knowing how it's like here actually. Like they would see like people only see Korea as Hallyu country. But then they forget that there are different culture here too, like different aspect of Korea apart from Hallyu. So I guess it's important to learn more about that than just Hallyu. Yeah.
Then, Rosita, I want to ask you, mentioned how Korea has other sides of culture besides the Korean wave or the K-culture, for example, K-pop, K-movies, and K-dramas that many people know of. Then could you tell us more about what new side of Korean culture that you found to be interesting after moving to Korea and living here for 5 years?
I guess like how people eat their food, table etiquette. And also how people talk, and formality is really important here, and how like different levels of hierarchy is so important here. I mean, as foreigner, like people don't really, even if we speak Banmar, okay, people sometimes can accept that, but sometimes like in some occasions, like especially for me, like I've been here for 5 years, some people cannot tolerate that anymore. So yeah, I guess it's also important to know about that too. And apart from that, I guess, that's pretty much it, I think. Yeah, I see. Think more, yeah.
Okay, then can I just ask you one more? So you mentioned about the influence of Korean wave and K-culture that kind of motivated you to come to Korea. So as we're talking about how Korean wave has led to the increase of immigrants here in the country today in our show, could you tell us what kind of impact K-culture had on your decision to move to Korea?
For me, like in terms of, before K-pop, I learned Korean first. So my real interest to come to Korea is actually Korean language, not K-pop, because I wasn't into K-pop until I moved here. So it's because like I kind of get used to the Korean K-pop songs now. So I kind of like getting sucked into it. Yeah. So before that, I kind of feel like I don't really like K-pop, but after living here, then I slowly like warm up to it, and I kind of like it. Yeah. So and I feel like especially after BTS, I think it's much more, people are more interested into Korea now. Yeah.
Definitely. All right, Rosita, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Right, so ending off, as globalization continues and with the growing global appeal of Korean culture, as Rosita mentioned, Korea will highly likely welcome even more people from abroad moving ahead. So you both have experience living in countries outside of Korea for several years. I want to ask you, how do you think we can create an environment where everyone feels included and ensure a smooth transition to a multicultural society?
So I believe, again, it starts with education and mutual understanding. For those moving to Korea, learning basic Korean and cultures can make a huge difference in how they integrate with the society. On the other hand, Koreans can benefit from being open to different perspectives and experiences and I believe that this is very important because other countries who have opened the doors for immigrants, they've often had a lot of collisions or conflicts with the locals and the immigrants meeting in town. And it's not because it was someone's fault, it's just that the differences in culture and background had a lot of conflict. So programs like cultural exchange events or language classes seems essential.
Right.
And at the heart of it, it's about creating a space where everyone, local and immigrants, feel valued and respected. Again, mutual respect. As Korea becomes more multicultural, this balance will be the key for building an inclusive society.
Right, definitely more education and fostering mutual understanding between both cultures is important. Now, if you have plans to move to Korea and you want to study the Korean language, one good option for you is to kind of find the King Sejong Institute, which is an overseas Korean teaching institution that not only teaches Korean, but also Korean cultural studies as well. So you can maybe search for the nearest King Sejong Foundation if you have plans to move to Korea. That's my tip. Now, what about you, Juliet?
Yeah, so going off about what you just said, both parties have to play an active role in creating the inclusive society. So to those interested in living in Korea, I highly recommend to learn the basics of Korean, put some effort towards the language and learning more about the culture. And to those living in Korea, I would say be more open-minded and understand how people from different backgrounds can connect. There are many resources available for both the newcomers and locals to learn more about multiculturalism, including language classes, cultural exchange programs, and community groups.
Right, and if I could give another tip for Koreans who are ready to embrace all the people who are coming from abroad, one good thing that you could try out is kind of look for the cultural centers of each country that are mostly run by the embassies here. So then I think we could be able to foster an environment where we could see mutual respect and mutual cultural exchange so that we could head into a multicultural society. And that's all from us today, but Newsstand will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Iwon Bin.
Thank you always.
Thank you. And Julian Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are New Generation.
We change today, inspiring daily life. We create tomorrow, inspired by innovation.